And we are live. Welcome, folks, to episode 3293 of the Survival Podcast. I've got a great episode for you today. I got Bob Baxley hanging on the line. We bring him on in just a moment. We're going to be talking about what you do when you've done what I've recommended for so long. Get out, get out, get out. Wherever you live, maybe it's not even a big city. But you live somewhere you can't do the things that you want to do because of land code and stuff like that and regulations and local ordinances and laws. So you're like, the hell with this. Instead of trying to change where I'm at, I'll go somewhere that's already like I want it to be and not change somebody else's life. And so you take that approach, that voluntarist approach, and you go out and you do that. And then the codes come to you in the form of cut and paste, boilerplate, Agenda 30 driven bullshit. And you all of a sudden have people wanting to pass all types of land use ordinances with total corruption. By the way, not even following their own rules. Where you are now. Do you pick up and move again? Hell no. Once you've already made that effort once, I don't think you back down. I think you push back. And that's what Bob will be on the line to talk with us about in just a moment. Before we do, let's go ahead and hear from our sponsors of the day. Sponsor of the day number one today is Ridge Wallet at ridge.com. And Ridge is no longer just a wallet company, folks. They really are a lifestyle brand EDC company now. Awesome rings for you gentlemen out there. The original Ridge wallets, all different types of patterns, totally secure, protects all those RFID cards from being scanned. Key fobs, knives, watches, all types of stuff. And it just all looks great. The pens are awesome. You got to check this stuff out. If you haven't checked out Ridge in a while, check them out today at ridge.com. And remember, if you're an MSB member, 10% off every single thing that Ridge Wallet offers. Next up today, butcherbox.com. You know, I like doing business with local producers if I can. Not all of us can. Not all of us have somebody that's right there that we can buy our beef from or our pastured pork or pastured poultry from. That's where ButcherBox steps in. Excellent grass-fed beef. Excellent pastured pork and poultry. Lots of other cool stuff too. And this is the only sponsor I have, guys. They've never paid me a penny. They pay me with meat every month. I get a giant box of meat. My giant box of meat just came yesterday. Stocked the deep freezer up again. Got rid of the box. Move on with life. They pay me in meat every month. That means you know it's good because I wouldn't accept their product in payment if I didn't love it. I wouldn't put it in front of you if I didn't love it either. So check out butcherbox.com. Remember, guys, these folks also give you a discount if you're MSB members to the tune of $10 a month. That's $120 a year. My membership's only $50. This one deal pays for it all. And by the way, if you have any issues ever with the ButcherBox customer service rep where like your code doesn't work, something, email me. I'll take care of it. The reason you might get pushback from one of their CSRs, we're the only people that have a recurring discount with ButcherBox. That's how much they support us. We've been working with these guys a long time now, 5 years. That's a lifetime when it comes to podcasting. And with that, let's move on and get our special guest up on the screen with us here. Hey, Bob, welcome to the Survival Podcast.
Thank you, Jack. Good to be here.
Hey, man, I was like, I know I've heard your brand before, Radical Gastronomy. And I was like, has he been on the show? And I'm like, so I went and looked and I'm like, no, he hasn't been on the show before because after 15 years, I might forget somebody. Right. But you kind of got like, and then I was listening to you talk. I'm like, I know that dude. And I don't. You got kind of like almost like
one time.
We did. Okay.
When you did the Self-Reliance Expo in Denver about 15 years ago.
Okay. So
you gave that talk on gardening without irrigation.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I came down, met you and Dorothy at that time. And you know, my son, he came to a workshop at your place last fall, or maybe, 2 falls ago. Cameron, big, tall guy, ex-Navy.
I know exactly who you're talking about. That's cool.
My boy. That's
all
my
right.
boy.
Yeah, it's your giant man is what it is.
He's a big guy, you bet.
But he'll always be your boy. But I was listening to you talk on your YouTube channel. I'm like, damn, I feel like I know this dude's voice. And I realized like, you've got, and this is like a compliment, I hope, you've got kind of like a Mike Rowe thing going on.
Well, I'll take that
voice and your cadence, like, you know, like I think you do a great job on voiceover work, but that's not what we're here to talk about, though. We're going to talk about what's going on in your county. I want to start out with What is your background like when you were trying to figure out what to do with your life, and what you want to grow up and be when you're a grown up? What was that like? Where'd you start out? What you do professionally, and then how do you end up in rural Colorado?
Well, I actually was in the restaurant business for about 22 years, and got out of high school, went to college, and I was cooking full time and going to school part time to pay for it, and realized, well, I think that if I just get into the restaurant industry and become a chef, I can probably do better than, at the time I was pursuing a philosophy degree. So I abandoned that and vocationally trained with a bunch of fancy chefs and in high-end hotels and restaurants. Owned a restaurant in Pagosa Springs, Colorado for about 12 years, and then divorce and other factors caused that to go into the drink, and I got into building. And around the crash of 2008, started looking around and realized how tenuous our reliance on these more complex systems is, and became quite concerned that the financial system could not be relied upon for our future and all of that, and discovered the Survival Podcast in that period of time, and got to thank you for talking me off the ledge of panic into actual preparedness. And so we started copy canning and stocking up on dry goods and that sort of thing. And in thinking about it, quickly realized that, well, you can provide for yourself for a set period of time through those approaches, but really to have comfortable self-sufficiency required getting into homesteading. And so that was the avenue we took. We started we were in a postage stamp patio home lot, and I actually built a vertical garden on one wall of that. And then it was a progression from there to a series of homestead evolutions. We rented a place that had a couple of acres. We bought some land and we're trying to develop it, ran some chickens and some gardens. And then we ran into a lot of complication trying to develop that 40-acre piece we bought in the mountains with the building codes and restrictions of the county. Eventually, we had a fire marshal who told us that not only did we need to blast to install a 10,000-gallon fire suppression cistern, but we would need to install a sprinkler system in an earth bag house with a sod roof that couldn't possibly burn. So we finally said, well, this is not the place to do what we want to do. And we sold that farm and we bought a farm that was already developed and had a home on it and all of that in Weldon, Colorado, where they have very lax zoning enforcement and that sort of thing. It was a 5-acre farm. There was 20 feet of sand, zero organic material whatsoever. But through using cow manure to build compost, I built gardens. We actually ran a stand at a farmer's market for several years there and fed ourselves about 90% of our own food, and running meat birds and pigs and dairy cows and gardens and all that. I did a full permacultural install on that property. And then, we were between fracking operations and sand mines and pretty industrial out there. We were kind of looking at the possibility of someplace with more physical beauty, and some friends out here in Western Colorado encouraged us to look into things out here. So we ended up looking at real estate out here for about a year before our current property popped up, and it was just too good to pass up, Jack. I mean, it was 20 acres, massive views of the West Elk Mountains. We're on the North Fork of the Gunnison River. We've got a creek that runs behind the house here, and it was listed for $200,000.
You went from the plains to the mountainside of the state.
Right.
Yeah, right. That's the part. If I'm going to live in Colorado, you're on the side that I want to live on.
You bet. You bet. West of the divide. And so the way that the market was in the Denver area with the improvements and I marketed that farm with the fully installed permaculture system and provided support for a year after the sale. And we were able to clear enough from the sale of that house to pay cash for this. And so here we are.
Awesome. Awesome, man. So then you get to this new place. It's beautiful. You got more land. You got a river and a creek. You got mountains. And
Good
you got
soil.
the most important thing of all. No people getting in the way. Department of Making You Sad is just out of the way.
Right.
And you're on this property now, and you decide to start over there, and then it all goes wrong. Or at least it has begun to go wrong. What's happened?
Well, see, Delta County is one of only 2 counties, I believe, in the state of Colorado that has no building department. And historically, up until very recently, whatever land use codes there were essentially not enforced. And there's very much a culture here of, things being available to us by right without having to ask permission from the county.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a new master plan put in 2018, and part of that plan called for a reworking of land use codes. Well, work began on that, and they hired a firm from out of the county to come in that essentially used the Delphi technique to create consent around reforming the land use code. And then during the pandemic, they cobbled together this boilerplate document from other jurisdictions and put it into place during a time where there were no public meetings. They didn't have Zoom calls set up. We had no idea what they were doing, and slipped that thing in January 21. And then they hired a character from out in California, and he was essentially the director of the planning department. And he got to work on doing about a 50-page additional rewrite to the code. And it came to a couple of our neighbors' attention that this new code would require that everything that we used to have secured by right would now be by permit. And this new revision included the elimination of light and medium industry. Like if you are a plumber and you're using your barn to store your tools, well, now that would be illegal. And if you wanted to build a barn, you'd have to get a permit for it. And just all of these compounding problems. So an alarm was raised among the community and Facebook groups and things like that. And we kind of mobilized a bunch of people that all of a sudden, hey, well, you weren't paying attention. And we've had that luxury in Delta County of not having to pay attention because nothing is enforced. To now, all of a sudden, they're going to try to tell you, you can't do all the things that you need to do. And particularly in this valley, because we have a lot of permaculture, we've got a lot of regenerative agriculture, a lot of organic farms. And for operations like that to remain viable, you got to be flexible. Sometimes you got to bring on interns and create new housing. And boy, if you got to turn to the county and ask permission every time somebody's going to put up a tent, you got a problem.
I was reading some of their, and I'll call it what it is, bullshit on their website.
Right.
This document they have supposedly refuting the claims that you're making right now.
Right.
And they were saying things like, no, you can put in tiny houses as long as the people that live in them are permanent residents of the property. What the hell business is it of yours? Who the hell lives in my house on my property, no matter how big or small it is?
Right.
And I think to really drive home the point here, I didn't look up the population of your county. But your county seat, your biggest town in the county, has about 9,000 people in it.
There are 31,000 souls.
Right. We're not talking about an area with people stacked on top of each other or something here. This is incredibly rural, spread out people who've been living this way for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And we were chatting before we brought you on here live, and I was saying I don't get what the motivation of these people is. I think you and I are in agreement. There's Agenda 2030 stink all over this.
Right.
But the local people that are pushing it, it is odd to me that it has become this important to them.
Yeah, it's really baffling. We had a meeting on the 28th of February where the county commissioners actually secured a theater space where we could put 800 people or so in there. We had about 700 people show up to that meeting and another couple hundred on Zoom. And, we had probably 100 people actually get up and speak 3 minutes each. And the chorus was universal against what they're trying to instill. And somehow, even with a unanimous rejection of their agenda, they're still pressing on. They dropped those pages of additional code that were proposed, but continued to hang on to the 2021 code. And now they're going through and redlining that. But that was really just the beginning of the corruption that has been revealed in this process.
So help me out here a second, because I did watch some of your stuff, but I didn't get a complete feel for it. Now, obviously, the county commissioners ended up involved somehow, and that would clearly be an elected thing. Yeah. This board, are these people elected? Are they appointed? Like, what accountability do they have?
Well, in our county, we've got 3 districts, and the planning board is comprised of 3 individuals from each of the districts that are appointed by the county commissioners to serve on the planning board. Additionally, there is a paid position of this planning director, and that is somebody who's essentially hired by the county administrator.
Okay.
So within that planning board, they've got a set of bylaws, and one of our neighbors, Victoria Turner, volunteered to be appointed to that board. Now, this is an unpaid position. They get like $30 in gas money per meeting. And she started questioning the fact that they were in violation of their bylaws. And, in a couple significant ways, one of which the chairman of that planning commission is, according to the bylaws, allowed to serve 2 one-year terms, and then must take a year off before serving another term if they're going to.
Okay.
And our director, our chairman in that position, was in the process of serving his 3rd consecutive term, and she called that out. And then the other issue that's still ongoing, there are members sitting on the board who live in the towns, in the incorporated portions of the county. Well, the Planning Commission only deals with the unincorporated portions of the county. So in the bylaws, it states that all of the members of this board must live in the unincorporated portion. And this is a political philosophy that goes all the way back to the Magna Carta. You can't make laws for jurisdictions where you don't reside.
Yeah, I mean, even in Texas, like I ran for state house, and I could only run for the district I lived in. Right. That's a pretty common thing, that to serve in a position, you have to live in the jurisdiction that you're serving. That's very common for an elected office.
Very common. Right. And that's what it says in our bylaws. However, we have 3 people serving on this board that do not meet that qualification. Well, our county attorney wrote an opinion on that, saying that, the state statute only requires that they be county residents, and so that supersedes your bylaws.
That's not how that works.
No, it's another absurd legal position. So you can see the kind of corruption and nonsense that's going on. So now they're in the process of rewriting their bylaws to accommodate their corruption, rather than rooting out the corruption to be, in line with the bylaws.
Yeah. Yeah. And they tried to get rid of this girl, right? They asked the county commissioner to remove her, and she defended herself fairly well. I didn't have enough time to listen to her entire defense, but what I listened to was very articulate, very well spoken, and it basically shut that down for a time. But it sounds like this battle's far from won. It sounds like it's still going on. It's just this mushy, evolving tactic on their side.
Right. So we, have put together a nonprofit called the Alliance for Land Liberty, and the URL is a4ll.org for anybody interested. And in real time, we're trying to cobble together the necessary structures and organizations to be able to fight this thing effectively. Now, at the same time that we're looking at trying to vote in home rule for our county, which would rest more power on the local level than at the state level, the state the state of Colorado has bills going through the legislature right now that would essentially strip home rule from everyone under the guise of affordable housing. But essentially what they're trying to do is, use that hot button feel good political point to strip power away from the counties and centralize it all in the state. And so once again, we get back to this 2030 agenda and the consolidation and centralization of regulation on how people can use their land. And of course, we have the 30-30 program from the Biden administration trying to get 30% of all the land and water under conservation easement in the country. And yeah, I mean, it's just one thing after another that's stripping our rights and our ability to do the good things that we need to do on our own land, and centralizing that power under what eventually would be, a global authority.
Yeah. Yeah. How pissed are people about this? And like, what's the pulse in the county? And like, is there anybody that's not part of this board that thinks this is a good idea?
If there are some developers who are itching to, put in subdivisions and things like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, this county is pretty unique. It was in the 1880s that the Utes were pushed onto the reservation, and this valley was settled. So really, it's only 1890 or so since there have been, white people in this area and ranching and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And so you've got, fifth generation ranchers, and then you've got a bunch of, permaculture, organic, hippie type individuals. But even in that disparate demographic of what would conventionally be left and right politics, it's a almost universal resistance to this regulation. You've got a lot of outside interests and money interests that
I'm sure. Yeah, that's got to be where it comes from. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's an incentive, not only of, of course, our county commissioners get kicked around on the state level when they go over to Denver for the gatherings of county governments, because we're so backward and, out of the norm. But I mean, it's a really unique little area. They sometimes say that we're the poorest county in the state, and sometimes that may be true, sometimes it may not. But really, that's only in terms of dollar bills exchanged. But a lot of the economy here is not happening in the white market. There's a lot of barter, a lot of trade. We've got amazing craftspeople. We've got amazing producers. And a lot of the exchange that actually goes on is in goods and services, not in money.
Yeah, and I'm sure government hates that. Government,
of course,
hates all that which it cannot tax. The reason to try to get everything under a permit or a license is it brings all under state control, right. And then it all is part of the tax harvesting. We're all live on the largest farm that's ever been created. It's a tax farm.
You bet.
Right. They're milking us every day and bleeding us every day. We're like Maasai cattle. Right. Right. They don't want you dead. They just want you producing milk and blood. Right. And as long as you're doing that, you're doing your job.
And not
because again, so is there any, like, can you get rid of these people that run this board?
Right. So these are all of the things that we're looking at with the Alliance for Land Liberty. Is we're examining recall, and of course the big dilemma with that is, well, if you get rid of the devil, then you run the risk of, the political machine installing a devil you don't know.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that we're looking at. We're also looking at other counties that have successfully defended themselves from this sort of thing, and networking with folks in Oklahoma and other counties in Colorado, and trying to really put together a tactical approach that could be used in other jurisdictions to combat this sort of thing. And at this point, we're trying to consult with lawyers and understand where we stand from a legal footing, and developing some fundraising endeavors to try to cover legal costs and discern the best tactics to battle this.
Yeah, because it seems like you have an overwhelming majority of residents that don't want this,
right?
And we have an overwhelming majority of people in this country that don't want a lot of things the federal government does, but making changes there tends to be a lot harder than doing it at like a local county level. So it seems like there has to be recourse to this,
right?
Money only buys so many votes in that type of a scenario, because like you were saying, like you have these like permaculture eco hippies, and you've got like these a fifth generation rancher is a hard son bitch, man.
Oh man,
like a dude chiseled out of freaking granite. You have to be at that point.
We still drive cattle up the highway into the high country every season, on horseback.
But my point is, like you said, that would generally be considered like politically pole opposites, but they're there for the same reason. The cattlemen are there because everybody left them alone, and the hippies went there to be left alone. Right. So there's like, you have this common enemy now, these people that want to interfere with your way of life. And I read some of the stuff, and some of the pushback on it was just nonsense. Like these things like, you can't keep your tools here if you're a plumber anymore and stuff like, well, no, because there's they say stuff about like cottage business law and that covers. Well, no, because all they have to do is say, well, that's not a cottage business. And I think what's people that are listening to this or watching us right now, what they may not understand is the level of corruption and contempt for truth that these people have. Because I watched this young woman, this is why they tried to get rid of her, challenge what was being done, point out they were in violation of their own laws and the law, not only their laws, but also the law, period. And I watched these people basically say, yeah, we are. We don't care. We're going to do it anyway. And if you want to challenge it in court later, go ahead and do that. And then want her to just shut up. Like a complete, like brazen, yeah, we're breaking the law. So what? We voted that it's okay for us to do it. That's who these people are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's staggering. It's staggering. Yeah. So we've, the Alliance for Land Liberty just launched a crowdfunding site on Give Butter. I don't know if you've ever run with those guys. They,
cool
after assessing everything that was out there, givebutter.com/A4LL is the campaign, and basically just trying to get a little money together to pay for lawyers so we don't get ourselves in a pickle. But, Jack, ultimately this comes down to the question of, okay, well, how far can you be pushed, and how far can a county government that is completely blind and deaf to the desires of its citizenry push this sort of an agenda before things start to get a little dicey, And these fifth generation ranchers and, the homesteaders and folks around here, they're quick to defend their rights.
Yeah.
And they're good shots.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, we were talking offline before we went live here, and where I grew up in the coal region, these guys might have just fell down a few times. I'm just saying, and I'm not advocating, I'm just saying, like, 35, 40 years ago, this was handled a little differently. And it makes you wonder, again, like, what makes this so important to these people? And I'm talking about your county commissioners that seem to have this board's back, at least to a degree, and the board itself, because these are people that, even though they live in town or whatever, they live in this county.
Right.
They live out in this place.
Yep.
You would think that they'd care at least a little bit about what the people that live next to them want.
Right.
Well, at least some thought that maybe I don't want to walk around looking on my shoulder for the rest of my life.
It's got to be awfully uncomfortable, to go to the grocery store,
This makes you think of the dude with the killdozer, I mean, like you push people far enough, you don't know what's going to happen. And to me, the only answer is this outside money, and it must be making these people promises. Because if I live where you live, and I'm seeking the power of being the chairman of the land use board or something, I'm a person with a neurosis for power.
Right.
Right. A normal person doesn't want to do that. They'll do it if they have to out of a sense of service or whatever. But when a person actually craves that kind of micro tyrant power, they have greater aspirations. And I'm just wondering if what funds this shit is like Soros money, or something like it, saying, well, you do what we need done. And we've got your back going forward. Because I mentioned earlier, I ran for the state house here a long time ago when I wasn't completely an anarchist yet.
Right.
And I ran as a libertarian as a political statement. I never intended to win, but I ended up I got more votes than the Democrat in that district.
Huh. Yeah.
So I actually did better than the Democrat candidate in that district.
Right.
And I was talking to somebody at a company function just back when I worked a corporate job, and we had a really high-end attorney and law firm that represented our corporations. And this guy, Jeff, was the attorney that was directly, working with us. And he hears this conversation. He walks up to me, puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, well, I know who has that seat. When you want that seat and you're ready to run as a Republican, let me know and we'll make it happen.
Oh, yeah.
And then he never stuttered. He never broke eye contact. It felt like, hey, I'll make you my whore. I'll be your pimp.
Yeah.
But he was dead. I have no doubt had I said, yeah, you know what? I'll play ball. The next election, I would have had that seat. I have no doubt. And I think it's that kind of grab ass, that incestuous grab ass that's being leveraged by the people that actually have, I don't think these people are like, yeah, man, we got to get Agenda 30 done. I think they're useful idiots within the chain, but they're power hungry, useful idiots being funded because I can't come up with and if anybody out there listening to us live can give me a better reason that these people would want to do these things that are clearly unnecessary. Because we were talking about this too, have they been able to answer a simple question? What happens if we don't do this?
Right. And they haven't. I mean, they say, well, we only do this because neighbors have arguments. And it's like, yeah, well, neighbors have arguments. And the amazing thing, there's an anecdote from some friends of mine who ran a composting business. So they'd bring in organic matter from various sources, and they had the windrow turners and all that sort of stuff. And out in a remote part of the county, not bothering anybody, they had a particularly hot load of compost, with a bunch of chicken manure in it, and the wind was just right. And boy, their neighbors were getting a waft of that, and came over and said, hey, it smells really bad. I can't open the windows at my place. And they said, oh, we're so sorry. We'll move the compost over here so it isn't blowing down on your place.
Yeah.
Problem solved. Well, if you have now the Department of Making You Sad, well, it's easier for that neighbor to drop the dime and call up the county code enforcer and get them to come over and levy a fine on you, and everything just gets worse. But to the potential of Soros funding and whatever to get these things installed in all of these rogue counties, the firm that did the consensus building for this new code was out of Durango, Colorado. And anecdotally, I heard somebody who had a conversation with him say that he said during the pandemic, he was bragging about getting 17 counties that had no planning department under code during the pandemic. And so this guy, it's a one-man firm. And so he was going out to all these counties, and by using the Delphi technique to, get the appearance of consent for this sort of thing and a bunch of different form boilerplate stuff, managed to essentially enslave 17 different counties while the world was shut down. and he was proud of it. So I don't know where that guy gets his funding or, his materials or what, but there certainly are people out there who are doing that work.
Well, yeah, he's not doing it pro bono. He's not doing it because he's bored.
No.
Right? Somebody's paying him to do that.
You bet.
I wonder what he makes per county.
Right.
Probably more than you and I make in a year put together or something.
You bet. Yeah, I'm sure.
What a piece of maggot shit. I'm sorry. Just like you're lower than the maggot. Like the maggot has a higher purpose in life than you do. You're the maggot excrement.
Right.
I mean, because it seems like the entire county government is at least somewhat part of this, because even though the planning board's the one doing this, like they have the rest of the government has some level of oversight. So how did the whole, like the commissioners, whatever, get so freaking out of step with the people that put them in office?
It's hard to figure. And, the more baffling thing is how can they remain so out of step when they've been, I mean, we stood there for 5 hours telling them to stop. And every walk of life, and young kids who with no public speaking experience up there stuttering their way through it, and and they just have a deaf ear. So I mean, it pretty conclusively indicates that there is a motivation outside of what is being shown. That they're following. Hard to tell what it is, but we had one gentleman who stood up there and explained how, when I showed up in this county, I was homeless, but because this organic farm allowed me to, live in the camper in my truck in their yard, well, now I have my own place, I have a business, and, you want to solve the homelessness crisis, make it easy for people to live. And in many cases, you're going to help it out. And, for us, when we came over here, we basically put everything we had into buying the land so that we could be mortgage free. And that left essentially nothing to build a house. We lived in an RV for about 1.5 years and, set up a composting toilet system. And then I, built this house that I'm speaking to you from for $8,000. And, I scored a bunch of materials. I, developed this dustcrete technique that's similar to hempcrete. Like these walls behind me over here, that's sawdust, Portland cement, and lime slip formed into place and then plastered with a lime plaster.
But well, clearly you didn't get a permit. So clearly it's going to fall down on you probably before this interview's over. The roof will just, and I'm sure that because we don't have all these land use codes out there, that there probably is a cave-in of somebody's house on a daily basis. People tow tiny houses down the road, hit the brakes, and throw them at their neighbors. It's chaos, it's anarchy, it's nuts, right? Like,
right. Cats and dogs sleeping together.
The way these guys are pushing this, you would think that that's what's going on. Like this is rural Afghanistan or something, and people are using trebuchets to throw goats at each other.
Right.
So that's where I'm back to. I think these people must have aspirations outside of this county. Some level of state office or state bureaucracy that they've been promised, because it doesn't sound like any of them have a real future. Like, when's the next election for these clowns?
Right. So it's a staggered, elections.
You don't get rid of everybody at once, right?
Yeah. Right. And, absolutely one of them has aspirations for the state Senate that he's, very public about. And I mean, it boggles the mind to essentially sell out your constituency to some other interest. Yeah, I mean, you would think that they've got designs on higher offices or, kickback deals, or perhaps they're compromised. Perhaps they've got some blackmail material on them, or a combination of all three. But I mean, just mind-boggling that they can so brazenly ignore the will of their people.
Well, you just need one offer that when this is all over, man, you've got a $300K a year lobbyist job to the state house,
right,
or the state Senate, right? Like you don't have to be qualified to be a lobbyist. There is no qualification. They give you a corporate card and a manual of what you can spend your money on, and you're good, right? So Even if you're not good at it, they might say you have a 3 or a 5 year contract, and then they get rid of you. Yeah. And if they paid you a couple $1 million, that's cheap in their mind to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish. And I think the real problem with Agenda 2030, is that the elite have worked out how easy this is to do at a local level.
Right.
The buying influence of a sitting United States federal senator is expensive.
Right.
But buying the influence of a county commissioner or a town council member or a mayor or a prosecutor, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, is relatively cheap. Yeah. And you do it little pieces, and it's kind of like you got to keep going back to Senator Scumbag and paying him over and over again to keep him in on what you're doing. But at the local level, you can kind of do more of like a one-time payout. You get the thing done, because this is the danger that I see. I think that you guys are going to get rid of these people.
Right.
I don't care how you get rid of them. I don't care how landslide it is. Once something's done, undoing it is way harder than doing it. Right. So if they fully get this implemented, then you get this fear to change things by the people that are put in there to change it, because you need one rule. Well, I vote to repeal all this shit. Ayes have it, out. Right. Takes effect immediately, done. But I don't know that happens if they get it done before you get rid of these people.
Right. Well, and that's the concern. Like any other government, there's a lot of architecture in place for making laws, but very little architecture in place for unmaking laws. Mm. And so, yeah, that's the concern, is if they pass it and get it in, getting it undone, super tricky. And, we look at the Universal Building Code, and most people aren't aware of who writes the Universal Building Code, Universal Residential Construction Code. There is an organization that is comprised of labor unions and building material manufacturers and what have you, that write the code and then go out to individual counties and coerce and incentivize the local county commissioners to adopt it. And, a lot of it's done through fear, where, if you guys write your own code and something goes wrong, then you're liable. If you use our code, then that insulates you from liability. And that's how you get 98% of all of the counties in the country using the exact same building code.
Which makes no sense, because building conditions are drastically different. And it's just something that it has such a pattern of happening over and over again. So people think like this is unique to government or whatever, but it's not. I used to work for a company called Fluke Networks. They're a computer test equipment company. They're spun out of Fluke with the multimeters and stuff like that.
Right.
And what we would do is we would get with architectural design firms and spec our equipment in the spec, so that when the job went to bid, and you'd get this call, I got this opportunity for 10, testers at $10,000 a piece, and I want a discount. Screw off, you're not getting a discount, because I know you have to buy it anyway.
Right.
Because we spec'd it in. And then we had people that sat on boards, right? Private boards, but boards, that did the specs for what the testers had to be able to do. And, us and one other company made testers that actually did the thing. So this is a thing that gets done everywhere. You go into the operational specification layer, and you're working at a level, and I don't mean superior, just at a level in the architecture, the hierarchy, that's so far, and it's just not higher, it's obscure.
Right.
So that the average person, even the person that's in the industry that's going to have to eventually pay the bill, doesn't have any idea it's going to happen, or that it's happening. And by the time it's in front of them, I guess I'm ordering a Fluke tester. Oh, I guess you need a permit to take a shit. Right? I mean, that's literally the same formula. And this type of thing and attacking people, like I'm excited next month, I'm going to meet Mike Reynolds, the guy that's behind the design of the Earthships. They took his architectural license.
Right.
For building houses in the middle of nowhere, where he wasn't using his architectural license to build them.
Right.
This pattern is just everywhere.
Well, it's kind of like Jordan Peterson getting his license pulled up there in Canada for practicing psychiatry. It's the same sort of thing. It's like, well, no, we just don't like what you're doing. Yeah, it's mad. this valley is amazing in the diversity of alternative building systems that have been employed to great success, from the straw bale houses to the adobes, the cobs, the earth bags, the, what have you, cordwood, everything. So it's like a museum. I think of it sometime like Ayn Rand's Galt's Gulch in many ways, because it's this isolated, sort of protected, hidden valley away from civilization where, there's really a parallel society and economy going on here that doesn't look like the rest of the country. And it's beautiful and delicious and impressive and
it's kind of like the experimental libertarian zone we've always talked about. We just didn't know it was there. Like we've always said, like, just give us a place and leave us alone and let us see what we can do. Right. And I've always said they won't do it because they know that what we'll do will work.
And that's what's happened here.
You notice the communists never say that. Can we have our own county and we'll run our own county and we won't bother you and we'll run our communism?
It no, they don't want that. It always works until you run out of everybody else's money, right?
Yes, which will be really fast if you have to stay in your own county with your communist county.
Right.
But you use libertarianism, you end up with abundance.
Right.
Even if it's not the state's version of abundance. I'm betting very few. They might say you're the poorest county, but I bet your starvation rate's pretty freaking low.
Very low. Very low homelessness, very low hunger, very low, strife and difficulty, very low crime. And, oddly enough, even without building codes, the buildings don't burst into flames or fall down like ever.
I don't remember exactly when, but it was right before COVID sometime. So 18, 19, somewhere in there. We've always had this pretty open legal system as far as trades in Texas. But the one thing you had to have, if you were going to touch a pipe, inside a house as a licensed plumber. You had to be a licensed plumber. So even just like roughing in the PVC sticks or the PEX sticks or whatever of rough it and then having a plumber come at the end, no, can't do it. Like electrical work, you can rough in the wire and an electrician puts it down. But plumbing, you had to have a plumbing license to touch a pipe in a house. Now, you want to put sprinkler systems in? No, it's fine. But a house, got it. So they removed that.
Yeah.
The hysteria. The houses are going to be flooded, and then once it went away, there was never another word about it. I'm still waiting to get a news article come out about somebody's house washing down the gullet because some guy glued a pipe wrong or something. Right. Nothing bad happened, but it's always the same shit. If we don't do this, oh my God, all this terrible stuff's going to happen. And it seems like your people that are pushing this shit, they didn't even try that. There's like no story they're going to tell you about why you have to do this. And it's bizarre to me. I think it's just like maybe this dude that got 17 of them done was behind it and just thought, just get another one.
Right. Yeah. It's mind boggling. They did try to float one story like, oh, well, we've got a problem with people living in RVs and just waste right out of the hose on the ground. And it's hard to imagine somebody living next to Blackwater and thinking that it's okay to just go on living that way for any period of time.
Yeah.
Hard to picture.
Well, and I would say, like, you don't need new land use codes. There's probably
there's already a health department
already. This is like when some guy shoots somebody and they say we need gun control.
Right.
The guy broke like 14 laws. Why don't you go enforce those 14 laws?
Yeah, exactly. That's already covered. It doesn't have anything to do with this. Yeah.
What would you advise people that are living in a place like you were in 2016 before all this shit started? Like, it seems to me that there's a couple things here. One, helping you guys push back however we can. But two, I think you'd be in a better position had someone seen this coming before it actually started and put up some sort of bulwark, right? Some sort of defenses. What do you think could be done? Because like we have a lot of places in Texas exactly like this. I live in one, and I could probably hit downtown Fort Worth with a rifle shot if I got the angle just right. I mean, I am not that far, and yet I have total freedom. And it seems to me that places like this need to put up some level of defensive position before, because this is coming sooner or later. This is coming to you too.
Well, and this is the thing, where the home rule approach is possibly helpful if you're looking at the people defending themselves against the state level encroachment.
Okay.
As far as at the county level, and we were talking about this before the show a little bit, at some point there's always a balance between what the law is and how it's enforced. And I don't know how your dad was growing up, but my dad was, not too eager to pull permits for things that he thought he could get away with not pulling a permit for, even if it was required by the law. So you've got a certain element of it is better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And then, what in all of this that's going on over here, they hired the code enforcer, who was a character who was a town cop, and then a county sheriff, and then a state patrol cop, and then hired on to be the enforcer for the planning department. And, he was using intimidation tactics and flying drones over people's property and getting permission from their neighbors to walk the fence line. And, rather than, as the code stated, that it would be a complaint-driven enforcement system, he was going out and essentially looking for violations of his enemies, be they political or personal.
A government employee attempting to justify their existence. The hell you say? That never happens.
Using their petty tyranny to exact revenge and that sort of thing. And so what we've done is organize ourselves in accordance with our watersheds and essentially gathered together all of our able-bodied neighbors and, form mutual defense packs, where if there's something going on your property, whether it's, somebody trying to break in or trying to steal your hay or whatever, or a rogue enforcer giving you grief, trying to make you sad, one text goes out to a dozen neighbors who the next thing you know, you look up and they're all blocking the driveway and making it very uncomfortable to enforce these regulations. And so
giving me goosebumps. One of my favorite movies, man, Tombstone.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I'm going to let you arrest us today, B-Han.
Right.
And what we need is the whole county, basically. I don't think I'm going to let you do that today.
Right.
Because they're not following. This is the big thing. They're not following their own rules.
Exactly.
So this is where you get a real problem. And this is where people say, well, like when they give you these mitigating things about it doesn't apply here or it only applies this way. How can you trust people that break the rules to get new rules put in place to follow the new rules that they put in place?
Yeah, well, that's the thing is if we're going to operate under the presumption that the rule of law is the code of the day, then that has to be universal. And, it has to apply to the lawmakers as much as it does to the average citizen. And when they've shown abject disregard for that and, rules for thee and not for me and all of that, it's difficult to respect what they're trying to accomplish. And at some point, ultimately there is a fourth branch of government, and that's us and what we're willing to tolerate.
Yeah. Consent of the governed is more than just a phrase when it comes right down to it in the end. I mean, the other thing I look at this and I just start thinking, does there need to be an East and a West Delta County? I mean, like, does there you need to be a county level secession? Is that a thing? I don't know that it's ever been done, but like at some point, do you just say, you know what, y'all just run your little town however you want to? We'll call that Central Delta or Island Delta County, and we'll have the rest of it, and y'all can go screw. I mean,
right.
Because I do look at this and I do see this coming everywhere. I think I was pretty strategic about where I'm at, but I still see it as an eventual threat. And, my goal is I'll just get everything built before they do it. you know.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of counties like in West Texas where people are making a go of things like this, trying to build their little communities and all. And out there, it's like things used to be for y'all. You do what you want. There's not just no rules. There's no one to enforce the rules.
Yeah.
There's nobody there, right?
Yeah.
Like, and if you hired this Barney Fife type guy in some of those places out there, he's gonna be busy.
Right.
You're gonna have to get across 6 dudes' ranches to get to the one dude's ranch he wants to jack with, because it's not, private roads and stuff. But this sounds like it's a little bit more accessible to people like that.
Yeah. And I think that as people are waking up, and we've had this luxury for so long of not even having to care or think about the county government, because it's a county of 31,000 people, and I think in the last presidential election 3,000 people voted, and so really you're looking at about 1,500 people to win an election. And so I mean, the county government's small, they were unobtrusive and easily ignored, and we all were resting on the laurels of not being messed with.
Well,
and
this is the kind of shit that gets another 1,000 people to vote that normally don't, right? Like, I mean, you got to believe these people are going to get their clocks clean.
Oh yeah, no, we put those seats out, and it goes back to what you were saying about that state house seat. You've got a machine, and this county goes red pretty reliably. And so the question is, who does the Republican Party have on tap? And it pretty much looks like their top guy is that dude from the Planning Commission who was serving an illegal third term. He would be the guy they'd put up to replace one of these seats. And, so
they want to plant him into the state Senate.
Well, no, they're one of the commissioners now. They want to bump him up to the state Senate and switch him out with this other guy they've been grooming. And, it's all a mess. Now, unlike most jurisdictions, we probably could run third-party candidates or independent candidates, and there's a reasonable chance of getting enough traction and enough votes to get those people in.
Yeah. Especially when people know why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So what is the plan? Is that the plan going forward? What is the plan? Where do you go next?
Right. So right now we're, through trying to raise some funds for the Alliance for Land Liberty and get a game plan together. We're definitely looking at putting a home rule vote on the next ballot where we can change the relationship between the state and the county and have more power right here in the county. We're also, of course, looking at, what I was talking about with these mutual defense pacts within neighborhoods where, we're going to make enforcement, if the enforcement's out of line, it's going to be met with resistance for sure. And we're looking at vetting political challengers for these seats and continuing to keep the pressure on with regard to the bylaws of the county commissioners. And really, more than anything, each of us reevaluating on a personal level where our lines in the sand are on this whole thing. And the one, positive that's come out of it is we're getting a much more close-knit and cohesive community built.
I guess being attacked does make community stronger.
Absolutely. Right? The opposition.
Because all of a sudden you and I, maybe we don't get along on a lot of things, but we get along on this.
Right. And
there's nothing that makes us better friends than a common enemy.
Absolutely. So,
and this is an enemy. I try to use caution in choosing that word in my speech, enemy.
You bet.
But these people are enemies. These people are against everything that people like us are for.
Right.
Everything. I guarantee you that these are the same type of people jacking up our kids in the public education sector. These are the same people, but the same type of people. They're all part of the same ilk. These are the same people that were out of the same group of controllers that are putting these prosecutors in place that prosecute somebody for defending their home, but let a guy that stabs somebody on the street for no reason out on his own reconnaissance. Like this is all from the same source. It's an attack on Western culture. So they're like, Jack went crazy. No, I've always been this way. Trust me, been doing it 15 years. Just because I don't believe in every 10-hat conspiracy under the sun doesn't mean that I don't know what's going on at a higher level. Yeah. So is there anything my people can do to help? I mean, most of us don't live here. We do have somebody. I have a comment starred by them. This person here, I think, lives in your county and says it might be the first time ever that they vote. But most of us are not from Delta County, Colorado, or even Colorado. Is there anything that we can do to help you?
Well, the big thing, even $10-20 to that Kickstarter at givebutter.com/A4LL would be fantastic. And really sharing the story around and talking about it, making people aware is really helpful. And things that you can do in your own counties in the same fight, the more of us who are showing our resistance to this control perversion down to the very minutia of our lives, it helps us all, I think.
I was about to throw you some money. I'm like, I'm probably going to have to enter payment information. So I think I'll wait till after we're done. So I'm not putting that up on the screen. But yeah, we'll throw a little money at you. And I asked my audience to do that as well. Before I let you go, can we chat a little bit about? I find what you're doing itself, as far as outside of this government shit, really interesting. Probably need to have you back on to talk about it in full. But you were talking about your house. What is your setup like now on this 20 acres? What do you got going on there, man?
Well, so we've got. The property is irrigated, and we've got really old water rights. And of course, in this section of the West, that's everything. Having good water rights is huge. Very simple system. So I'm flood irrigating a 3-acre pasture where I rotationally graze Jersey cows. I've got one calf on the ground so far and another due any minute here. So we hand milk these 2 Jersey cows. We always run a couple of pigs. I just get feeder pigs. I don't support a boar over the winter or anything like that. So we just buy some feeder piglets from neighbors and raise them out for all of our pork and bacon needs. Sometimes we'll run lambs. We usually do about 75 Cornish cross broilers, rotated daily on grass, keep a laying flock as well. Then a pretty extensive no-till garden, and I'm kind of a chaos gardener. We really focus on seed saving and locally adapted genetics. We trade seeds with our neighbors and starts with our neighbors and all of that. And then here for the house, it's a 550 square foot cottage. And my original plan when we were living in the RV was to build a bathhouse. Okay. And so I did a timber frame cordwood. And, then realized that with the finances and everything that happened during COVID, we'd probably be better off just adding a living room onto that, which is where I'm sitting now.
Okay.
And I've documented all this on, the Radical Gastronomy YouTube channel. The video about my Dust Creek process is creeping up to 250,000 views. Here, it just recently had a pretty good run, but I detail all the natural building techniques, the earthen floor, the lime plaster, the cordwood construction, how I did the rubble trench foundation, and all that. So I encourage folks to check that out. I try to be pretty good answering comments with the details and things like that. So yeah, that's basically where we're at. We're trying to set it up where the bills are very small and almost everything that we need is produced right here on the farm, and live that simple life. And if the government would just get out of my way, I'd hang out and watch birds and weed the garden and milk my cows and be thrilled about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what this conversation really gets to the crux of is the most fundamental human right is the right to be left alone.
You bet.
Right. That's the most fundamental human right that there is, the right to be left alone.
Yeah.
And that's what's under attack right now. And I encourage those of you that are in places where you're living a very free life because you've made a conscious choice to go there, to understand that that needs to be actively defended. Right. It really does, because and it starts with just talking to your neighbors. We have a fairly small area here that's unincorporated, and most of it is low income. Yeah. And so if any jurisdiction annexes it, it's going to cost them more to provide service than they'll ever get out of it. Right. That's why it was a strategic decision. Right. But we still talk to our neighbors about, well, what do we do if they try it? And the answer is you don't get to. I mean, we've literally decided, like, we will be on our roofs with ARs before we let you annex this place. Right. But it doesn't, and I honestly believe to people around me, like, the fight looks too hard, I'm not going to do it. But it does nothing to stop Tarrant County from doing some shit like this. So we need to have a multi-layered defensive posture. You're just not doing this here. Right. We don't need this. We've managed to survive. And it's the same pattern. The pattern is set. This shit that's going on, if you've paid attention with this Restrict Act, where they said it's a TikTok ban. If you wanted to ban TikTok, you'd pass a one-page piece of legislation called the TikTok ban. Right. And it would say, heretofore, the application known as TikTok and any of its associated actions are banned for ISPs to provide access to in the United States, so saith on this day. Simple. Bam. It'd be a quarter page and it'd be over, right? Instead, it's this monstrosity, of a bill that gives the government the ability to ban anything, anytime, for any reason whatsoever, with no oversight, not going back to the legislature. Right. It's the same shit.
It's a workaround for the First Amendment. Yeah.
Like, because you said, well, we have these problems with people dumping shit out of their RVs. Okay, then pass a more stringent law that says what happens to you if you dump shit out of your RV.
Right.
That's right. And you know who's going to object to that? The only person objecting to that is going to be the dude that looks like the guy on Christmas Vacation.
Right.
Cousin Eddie, right? Cousin Eddie's the only one that's going to object to that because he wants to put it down the storm sewer, right? Right. So nobody would have a problem with that. But no, that we have to, because that might happen, we need this litany of shit that tells you whether or not you can store the tools you use for your job in your own shed behind your house.
Right. Yeah. It's absurd. It's
almost like they want a revolution. It's almost like they're asking for it,
Let's find out how far they can push us.
Yeah. There's a meme where it's like a little dude with a stick, and he's got like all the media, like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, all on him. And then, like, there's these two little things on the ground, and he's sticking them with a stick, and it says, "Come on, do a civil war." Right. Like they're just trying to provoke it.
Right. Yeah. Well, on the issue of withdrawing consent, and of course the opposite of consent is dissent.
Yeah.
One tactic that we're considering is, perhaps recording with the county clerk removal of consent on an individual basis, but get everyone that we can in the county to go down there and line up at the county clerk's office and have a stack of removal of consent forms that people can just add their name and sign, and go in there one after another and get the county clerk to notarize it and record it into the county record that, since any just government derives its powers from the consent of the governed. Yeah. Well, if we withdraw our consent, where are you at now?
You don't have it, and there's enough numbers on the books officially that say you don't. I guess another aspect that could be done here is a landslide of lawsuits.
Right.
I mean, if, federal court or whatever, or the Colorado state court, and just, it actually isn't that expensive to sue somebody, but it is kind of expensive to defend yourself against being sued.
Right.
And I think that needs reform, by the way. However, while it's in place, they use their shit against us all the time. Right. I have no problem with a little judo move and putting that force back on them.
Well, we're also looking at the surety bonds that are held by these elected officials. And, if we can make claims against their bonds and their bonds get pulled, well, they've got to leave office and they can't run for any office ever again. And so we're pursuing some of those tactics through Bonds for the Win and, other organizations that employ that tactic. And, just the kitchen sink of approaches to say, okay, well, where do we have leverage and where is it best applied to try to get to counter whatever the external influence is that's inspiring this behavior from our elected officials in the first place?
Agreed. Let's hit a few things people have said here that I've starred. Just have a few. I don't have an answer for this. I don't know if you do. How can I get a list of countries and counties that don't have building codes? Countries would be cool, but counties are great. I think it's kind of case by case. I mean,
yeah, I think there's one other county, and I think it might be Mesa County out west of us here, but I'm not sure, in Colorado. But it's probably a Googleable thing.
Yeah.
And the question then remains, how long will it be that way? And if you're making long-term plans, if you've got the money to go in and get everything built quick before the boogeyman comes, great. But it's I wish that there were more places that were sanctuaries.
Yeah. They say Alaska's the last frontier, but it freezes really hard up there. It seems the actual last frontier in the lower 48 appears to be the desert Southwest.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not that you'll be left alone, but you have a pretty high probability of it, because even if they have rules, they just don't have the manpower to do anything about it.
Right.
But man, you're back to it's the harshest environments. Any place that's easy, they've already taken over.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Don't try to do this anything in the northeastern United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got zone 5 and 6 up there, everything grows, the soil's fertile, Dutch farmland fertile in the country. You can't do anything.
Right.
You can't do anything. Everything's already sewn up. So I think people need to more look at where do you want to live? And then what's the freest place in that area? If you're truly completely geographically untethered and you'll go anywhere in the country, I'd say lead with trying to find people in our community that'll help you out. I'd love you to come here, but I can't say don't look at Tennessee. We got a lot of great TSPers up in Tennessee. We got some great people in Florida. Look for people. But the other warning I'll give you is when we moved here, we had about a 2-hour circle that we were looking in. It makes a real estate agent's life hard. They're somebody going, I want to live in this zip code or on this street, or I want my kids in this school. You're like, I need to be within 2 hours of this spot.
Right.
Oh, and it's a bitch to look too, man. It takes you a lot long. You don't go look at 10 houses on a Saturday when you're doing it.
No.
You look at 2 if you're lucky.
You're looking at acreage too. And as I said, we spent a full year. I mean, every single listing that met our criteria, it's got irrigation water, it's got established trees, it's got decent views, those sorts of things. And it took a year of examining every listing until, this one finally popped up. And boy, a lot can change these days on the political landscape in that kind of time.
This here, and if I say your name wrong, I apologize. It looks like it's Evelina, okay, who lives in your county, said the people here in Delta County often have nowhere to go. We're priced out of other places. This is our home. And for the politicians, it's just a job and a stepping stone. I think that sums it up perfectly. Yeah. And what's interesting is here's somebody that I don't know. Maybe you do know them. I don't know them. This was listening to the problem as research for this interview before we did the interview. This is exactly the conclusion I had already reached.
Right.
Because I asked you even before we got started on air, what the hell is motivating these people to make this a hill they'll die on?
Right.
A hill they'll die on. I mean, this is you're not getting reelected. I don't care. This is, it looks like, they're as committed to it as somebody that was legitimately committed to something like the civil rights movement. I don't care if it costs me my office. This is the right thing to do. This is insanity.
It's morally backwards. It's one thing to commit to, okay, this is the hill. If you have a philosophical and moral
That's what I'm
underpinning
saying.
to justify it. But this, it's the motivation is just baffling.
But if you're planning on running for statewide office and you're worried about how many people in Denver are going to vote for you, you're not real concerned about it.
Right. Well, the thing is that for that election, they still need our votes because, there are, our representatives, and
like I said, they may be getting lobbyist jobs or somebody's cabinet position or who the hell knows what,
Or maybe there's a stipend from, a big developer like KB Homes or somebody like that that's saying, well, if you can make a path for us to get in there, we'll give you a percentage.
Well, when we build this new subdivision on Bob's ranch after we kick him off of it, we're going to need someone here local to superintend that project. And you seem like the kind of guy that would be good at that job.
You bet. You don't even have to come to the job site. We'll just pay additional $50,000 a year,
Yeah. How's the car allowance sound? And, we're going to have a model home when we're done building it. Maybe we just give it to you,
That's right.
This is how, and people are probably laughing right now. This is how this shit gets done, guys.
Oh, for sure.
People think like this kind of conniving thing that's done at the federal level isn't done at the local level. I would say it's more done on a local level because it's easier to get done.
Well, the price point for entry is much lower. I mean, these guys, they're making $78,000 a year as county commissioner, and that's a part-time job, So it doesn't take a whole lot of money to
Lincoln Town Car and an expense account, and you got it.
You bet.
So K-Box says, has this code been stopped anywhere? Is there any place that you know of that they tried this approach and it got plumb shut down successfully?
Well, actually, down there in La Plata County, where Durango, Colorado is, they essentially were able to turn it back and went to a much more, regionally sourced approval system. And so we were hoping when we gathered together all 700 of us and, kicked the county commissioners around for about 5 hours, that we would end up with a result like that, where they would say, okay, well, rather than do this code and impose it on the entire county. And historically, we have had, within our watersheds, councils that would essentially, grant permission for the sort of improvements that would impact the neighbors. Like if you wanted to double the traffic on your small little road because you were putting up a farm store or you're going to have an event space with weddings or whatever, well, then, all the neighbors would have a chance to weigh in on it, and this council would approve it. And that was about all you needed to do. And a lot of folks would like to go back to that. Well, that's a big problem for developers that want to come in and do things that no one in the county wants.
Sure.
So that's, a big motivation for this, for the county commissioners, is they're getting pressure from these moneyed interests that are saying, well, the things we want to do to these people in this county, they're not going to allow if it's up to them. So let's remove that power from their hands and just have a code. If we follow the code, they can't stop us,
Yeah.
So La Plata County did have some success with that. And there are others. There are folks that certain members of our organization have been in contact with just north of there down in Oklahoma that have been doing the same battle and having some success. And so, it's difficult.
So just on, I guess, my comment, and Jordan here agrees. So you should do audiobooks, Bob. Your voice is soothing.
Jordan, you should subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can listen to my voice as often as you want.
Yeah. I know when I was listening to some of your videos, I'm like, this will be a good interview because this dude can talk.
Thank you, sir.
So yeah, dude, I've enjoyed this. I hope our folks will reach out and contribute a little bit to help. I do hope people take away from this the importance, like I said, of putting up a bulwark, putting up a defensive posture maybe not even to do anything, because sometimes doing a thing starts something in motion that you would prefer not to, but to have it all ready to go. Like if this shows up, this is what we're doing instantaneously. Because in fact, the fact that all these people got on board with this probably didn't happen overnight. And it had, the second that an inkling of it had gone on, the whole town showed up and said, I don't think so, Skippy. It may have shut down a lot quicker. I think there's also another lesson here that we kind of danced around and talked just barely a little bit about, but how much of this shit went on during COVID.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you know, we talk about patterns all the time. It's the same. We go back to 1913. And the Congress passes the Federal Reserve Act right before Christmas when almost everybody was on vacation.
Right.
I mean, like, this is not new. None of this shit is new. When nobody's looking and the pretty girl's distracting you, the magician sticks the rabbit in the hat so he can pull it out, right?
You bet. Yeah.
That's what's going on here. They're doing whatever they can in the dark of night and under closed doors. And to me, there needs to be a plan everywhere where we already have these freedoms. And I also think that we need to start developing a template for I don't know that we can play defense any longer.
Right.
I've always been, just go where you're allowed to do what you do. But it's like, you're not going to leave us alone. Okay, then we need to go on the offense.
Right.
And we need to have people that have, close to freedom, but not quite freedom, start pushing for freedom and pushing back so that some of these, because right now, if you think about it, they have an incredible tactical advantage.
Right.
They can pick this year 20 counties throughout the whole country. They can attack if they get it done, they don't have to do another thing. They can pick another 20 counties.
Right. And
so they have huge resources to hit these small, and it's all small places. Like the big places are done already.
Right. Well,
that's
the thing. If we can put up resistance and make it, just like the issue with enforcement, boy, if it's hard to get these small podunk counties in line, then, they're going to have to abandon the tactic at some point. So, yeah, I think that, anybody out there who lives in an area where they're not constantly harassed by code enforcers and petty bureaucrats, being proactive and do whatever you can to ensure that it remains that way.
Absolutely. And Matown Zach here says, it's like Jack said before, the most dangerous person is the one who just wants to be left alone, but realizes they will just never be left alone. Only one thing left to do. And I think that, that's becoming reality here, is that we're not going to be left alone, that there is an agenda on the table. And you folks, you can think it's conspiracy theory if you want, but I don't have another explanation for why all of a sudden this podunk 2-bit authoritarian land board in a part of Colorado that most of you never heard of before today, all of a sudden wants to implement all this control on a group of people that want nothing to do with it and have been fine without it for 150 years. And if anybody out there wants to say this is a conspiracy theory, then you give me that explanation as to how this happens organically all by itself.
Right.
Without some nefarious force behind it. Because I don't see it. I'm sorry. So real quick, I want to remind people what you said that they can do to help. You guys do have a fundraising site set up. And again,
GiveButter.com
/A4LL. And I will add that to the audio notes for everybody today, along with the other resources that you gave, the Alliance for Land Liberty as well, so that people can learn more about this and try to help out if they want. I would appreciate it, guys, if you would do just that, because if you don't, I don't know who is.
Right.
I mean, like, this is one of those things where I always say, a fight for liberty anywhere is a fight for liberty everywhere. And the way I'll put it this way. I've kind of thrown out a call today. If you live someplace like this, to set up like the defensive perimeter, well, the best thing you can do is go on somebody else's offense before you need offense of your own. Because when you push this back, then you get a template of what that looks like.
You bet.
And the next thing I would do then is, wherever it's successful, collect that template up and get it in place and ready up. to implement instantaneously. Because one thing we have over these bureaucrats is they can't think creatively.
Right.
They have one way that they do things, which is we just all say we're doing it and we do it, which is why they got so pissed off when that gal brought up their own rules and put it in their face and said, no, you can't do this. Your own rules say you can't do this. Oh, we're going to do it anyway. No, you can't do this, because they don't know another way. So we have the ability to be really flexible, have a template in place, and I guarantee you they're not going to try a different way until it fails a bunch of times. So let's make it fail a bunch of times, you know? Bob, thank you for being with us. Please feel free to come back anytime you want. If you ever want to toss a guest app my way to talk about more of the permaculture stuff you're doing, I would love to have you on about that. And I hope people do what they can to help you out.
You bet, Jack. Well, I sure enjoyed it, and we'll do it again.
All right, folks, real quick before I go, I want to remind you, if you like the show and the work that we do here and you want to help us out, one of the easy ways for you to do that is do your online shopping at tspaz.com. That is TSPAZ, tspaz.com. You'll see all of the stuff I recommend and reviewed there. It's all by category alphabetically. But even if you don't buy something I recommend, as long as you start your shopping there, you help us out eventually. Today's item of the day, I brought this around a lot of times. It's one of the best-selling little gadgets on all of the T-Spaz catalog. It's made by a company called Cable Matters. It's a 6-outlet wall mount surge protector. It's a surge protector, but that's not really the big value in it. The big value in it is it turns your little 2-outlet into a 6-outlet with 2 USB charging ports. And it's $11 on sale today. So I think that is a heck of a deal. I don't know if you can buy a faceplate cover and a plug to put into your thing to install a standard plug for $11 anymore. Anyway, this helps you out with situations like my wife plugs those dadgone plug-in scented air freshener things everywhere, and they take up both holes and you can't plug anything in. And you know, my chargers constantly disappear in the hands of grandchildren and stuff like that. So I've just installed a number of these throughout the house. It's made my life better. It's a little lifestyle hack. Up at the top, you'll see, if you're looking at the video, there's a little light clear piece of plastic up at the top. That lights up when it's plugged in. It indicates that there's power, and it indicates that the surge protector is active. It is bright enough that it can act like a night light. That's good depending on where you put it, but I personally wouldn't put one of these in my bedroom because I like my room to be dark when I sleep, so that's a good thing to know. A couple people in the review said, well, it doesn't matter because I painted over it with some black paint and made it go away, so you can do that too. But check it out at tspaz.com. Remember, you can always help us by doing your shopping there. You can also help us by becoming a member of the MSB. Please consider doing that. Real quick announcement. I said this earlier this week, but not everybody catches every episode. Jack Spirko is going on one of his vacations, and it's going to be about 2 weeks with my wife. That'll start next week. So from Monday next week through the following week, you will have 10 rewinds. I have a great selection of rewinds. I think the earliest one started about 2011, and the latest one at the very end is up to like 2019. So a vast period of time across TSP's evolution there. Tons of different topics. I know some of y'all are not real hip on rewinds, but I think you'll enjoy these. Lots of education. Really great interview with Jeff Lawton. Tomorrow, I will have the one and only Nicole Awesome Sauce with me. I put out a thing on Nostr saying, what do you want me to talk about Thursday? And she said, a live chat with me. And so we're going to take a lot of things that people suggested, and Nicole and I are going to go through that list and some other stuff, and we'll hang out with you tomorrow. Friday, expert council Q&A, and then vacation. So anyway, I wanted to let you know that, and I appreciate everybody being here, and I will catch you guys tomorrow with another episode.